The preamble of the United Nations Charter establishes that all nations, whether large or small, enjoy equal rights under international law. In the world of geopolitics, however, the reality is that not all nations are created equal. There is a group of countries that possess characteristics or combination of characteristics that bestow upon them power and influence to shape affairs of the world in fundamental ways. These countries are known as great powers. So what are some of these characteristics? What makes a great power great? Let me start with the most obvious: size. Great powers are big countries. So if you look at the map, you will see we are talking about Russia, China, the United States, India, Brazil, Canada, Turkey. The list goes on. But size is not the only factor. There is also location. Consider China. China has 14 land borders and multiple maritime borders with its neighbors. The United States has 2 land borders with Canada and Mexico, and it is surrounded by 2 large bodies of water called the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Now, why does this matter, you may ask? For one simple reason: security. You see, for long periods of its history, China has vexed over the risk of being invaded from abroad. The United States, in its history, has witnessed its borders transgressed only 3 times: 1812, 1941, 2001. Now let me talk about demographics. The second characteristic. India has surpassed China as the most populous country in the world, more than 1.4 billion people. China is second, also around 1.4 billion people. The United States is third, but at roughly 333 million people, considerably smaller. Now, in the case of India and China, both have used this large base of population to draw top talent in order to drive their economies. And they've done this very successfully over the last 2-3 decades. At first glance, the US has a much smaller base. But I would submit to you that the United States actually has a base of maybe even 4 billion people, half the world's population. What do I mean? Well, if the United States was to offer a green card to the top talent of every global South country in the world, how many people do you think will jump at that opportunity? Of course, we won't know for sure, but I would bet that a significant number would. After all, the rise of the US as an economic and technological powerhouse has been achieved in no small measure through the contribution of immigrants. Third, military power. Great powers, by definition, have global interests, and they need strong militaries to defend and to advance those interests. If you look at the size of standing armies, China has the largest military today, followed by India, the United States, North Korea, and Russia. But of course, the size of the army is not the only factor. Consider military bases, and in particular, overseas military bases from which power can be projected. The United States has access to more than 700 military bases and installations across the world. Of course, other powers have access to military bases too. Russia, China, France, Britain, but their numbers pale in comparison. Consider also defense budgets. The United States today spends more on defense than the next 4, 5, 10 countries combined. A fourth characteristic, innovation and technology. According to WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which tracks these measures globally, the most innovative country is Switzerland, followed by Sweden. The United States is third, Britain fourth, Singapore is fifth. But among great powers, the United States is the most innovative and technologically advanced. And we all know what a critical role technology is going to play in the industries of tomorrow. Which leads me to my fifth characteristic, economic power. If we measure by GDP, the United States remains the largest economy in the world. China is second, followed by Germany, Japan, and India. Now, China has been making great strides, especially over the last 3 decades. In fact, by other measures, PPP, for example, purchasing power parity, China has already surpassed the United States. But what about other indicators, like the dominance of their currency? The US dollar remains the primary currency reserve of all central banks in the world, commanding almost 60% market share, so to speak. Second is the euro, then the yen, the British pound, and the renminbi. Now, this affords the United States an enormous amount of influence over global financial transactions. And last but not least, soft power, defined as the ability of countries to achieve their objectives through persuasion rather than coercion. Again, there are many indicators. If we look at diplomacy, China has the most diplomatic missions globally. Second is the United States, and then several other countries, Japan, Turkey. But if you look at alliances, alliance relationships, the United States has more alliance relationships than any other country in the world by a very large measure. What about entertainment, a very popular measure of soft power? Well, if you look at global blockbuster movies, you will see that the highest grossing movies of all time have been produced by the American entertainment industry. So, what does this mountain of data tell us? Well, it tells us that China is certainly rising, but the United States remains the most powerful military and economy in the world. It is one of the most innovative countries, and it is one of the most attractive countries. Now, why does this matter? It matters because the United States is also a deeply divided society. Look at its politics today. Look at its economics today. So much so that people talk about the decline of the United States, some even the terminal decline of the US. But the fact of the matter is, the data does not bear this out. And why is this relevant for you, sitting there, or for me? Well, let me make 3 points. The first, at an individual level, it will have a bearing on decisions that you might make, that others might make. For example, where you want to do a PhD or your postdoc, where you are going to invest your first million when you make it. I won't reach that, but you probably will. Where you're going to lodge your patent application. Second, it helps us better understand how other countries, smaller countries, make the foreign policy decisions that they do against the backdrop of competition between great powers. Third, and perhaps the most important, it raises a fundamental question. How do countries like China, like the United States, use this enormous power and influence they have amassed? Will they use it for the betterment of humanity, to fight climate change, to address the need to be prepared for the next global pandemic, to help us understand the AI revolution and its impact on our societies? Or are they going to use this power and influence to divide rather than to unite, to build barriers rather than bridges? Make no mistake, the answer to these questions are going to have a ripple effect for you, for me, for humanity, for many, many years to come. Indeed, as Uncle Ben told Peter Parker in the movie Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Yes, I know it's a trope, it's a cliche, but that does not make it any less true. Thank you.